Jody Reamer, if you're watching or listening, and you might be, ask Laura about her young adult novel. It's a great premise. I would love to see that young adult novel out and about. I won't say anything more about it until you're back on the show and we're talking about it being published.
The problem with that young adult novel is I can't make it into a middle grade novel with the premise that I have. So right now it's just going to sit on the shelf while I try to create a brand for myself in the middle grade world, which is so tricky. As you know, middle grade is a very hard market to market to. Because your readers are not the ones who are buying the books. It's their parents who are buying the books. It's mom and dad or their teacher who is kind of bringing that book to them. So it's a very tricky market to kind of put your foot in and make a name for yourself. So slowly but surely.
I mean, just keep churning out amazing books. That's a difference maker. Although this is book 4 that you're publishing. And of course, you're right now writing book 6, which I assume we can talk about Glitch. We can't talk about the mysterious book 6.
Right, because I mean, we can't talk about it because it's so mismatched and a mess right now. I couldn't tell you where that book is going yet. I've had to put it on hold while I copy edited Glitch and got ready to promote this guy. So that's my job tomorrow, is when I drop my 2 youngest up at preschool for 2 hours, is to attack that one again. But no, we can talk a little bit about Glitch. Glitch right now is set to come out in May of 2020, which is exciting, especially since Hoax came out kind of at a later publishing date. I like that May publishing date because it hits summer readers so much better than the August one does. But Glitch is my first time traveling book, which I am a huge time traveler fan. I think I mentioned in the last...
Did we not count Float as a partial time traveling book?
Float has some time traveling elements, but it definitely doesn't get into time traveling as much. In Float, there's all these campers who have these different weird problems they're dealing with. Our main character floats. We've got a kid who's invisible and can't control it. And one of the kid's problems is he time travels and he can't control it. So since he's not the main character, we don't get into the nitty gritty of time travel. And I did that on purpose because time travel, the more you think about it, the more confusing it is. It's just one giant headache. So I don't think I will ever write another time traveling book, which was like it for me, because I always read that you can't write something smarter than you are. And I feel like Glitch pushed the limits. Like my editor was asking for all these clarifications on how the time traveling worked. And I'm like, I don't know. I left that vague for a reason. I didn't want to go into too much detail because I feel like the more you explain with time traveling, the more people can come back and say, well, but what about this? Or well, what about this? So the premise of Glitch is it's set in a future where we have figured out how to time travel. Not everybody, just a select group of people have the ability. They're called glitchers. And they figured out very early that having everyone just time travel whenever they want is a disaster. Because if you really want to screw up the future, you mess up the past. So basically, this story starts with these 2 kids, and they're at an academy, which is hidden and secretive, where they are trained to go into the past, not to change it, but to catch the criminals who are trying to change huge historical events. And this actually came from one of my things I used to teach in 7th grade. A lot of my ideas come from teaching 7th grade. If I ever run out of ideas, I'm just going to have to go back to teaching 7th grade. But we used to do this big research thing where there was this book by Life, and it was called 100 Photographs to Change the World. And it was basically 100 photographs of these huge historical events. And my kids would have to pick an event and then argue whether or not it was the most important, event that changed the world. And as I'm looking at all these pictures of Martin Luther King and the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire Factory, and the Birmingham bomb, all these things, I said, guys, what if Hitler had won? What would the world look like? And it just mind boggled them. I said, well, what if Abraham Lincoln hadn't been assassinated? How would our history look different if he hadn't been assassinated? So it just started going, well, what would, our history is so touchy. You change one little thing in history and it just sends things off on a different trajectory. So that's kind of where the idea for Glitch came from. So in the story, these kids are training to go back and protect our history, not because it's necessarily perfect. So for example, the opening scene, my character is trying to prevent someone from stopping Abraham Lincoln's assassination, which seems so counterintuitive. right? Like, it seems like we should save that amazing president. But if you look at history, you can't really change it without screwing up everything else. And so that's one of the big things in the story. And they find out something that's going to happen, and they have to break every single rule they've ever been taught in order to save everything they care about. So it's my first book I've ever written from 2 different points of view, which was an interesting challenge for me and was really fun. It's from a girl and a boy, which was fun as well, because I wrote, so far, I've had 2 books with a girl protagonist, the Edge of Extinction series, and 2 books with boy protagonists, which were these 2. So it was kind of a way to meet in the middle. It was also my first time writing as a race that was not my own. I have a white girl protagonist and a black boy protagonist. So that was kind of scary as well, except for the fact that race doesn't really play a part in the story. And I wanted a book where I felt like you didn't need to have a book with a character with a different nationality and just have it be about their nationality. They can just be a cool kid having an awesome adventure in a book, which is kind of what Banneker does in your books. I mean, it doesn't really focus on who he is as a person. That's who he is, and he's awesome, right? So it was a little scary, but also really exciting to write from those 2 different points of view and try something new with the full awareness that I could send it to my editor and have her say, I hate it, you need to rewrite it from one point of view, which totally could have happened and would have been really, really hard.
I live in an interracial family, and race very, very well, it used to never come up. And then the election in 2016 happened. There you go. There's a time travel scenario for you. Go back and stop Donald Trump from getting the sports almanac. Oh, well, moving on. That's a fun Back to the Future reference.
Cannot talk time travel enough.
Let's talk a little bit more about Glitch. Are you going to be using sensitivity readers, or having used sensitivity readers to help you write from a perspective of a race that's not your own?
To some degree, my editors have helped with that. If they think you need a sensitivity reader, they make sure you get one. But with Glitch, because like I said, it's not like race plays a big part in it at all. It's not a part of the discussion or the theme. The theme is about something completely different. It just happens that that's who they are. And so we didn't really have that. I am going to have a friend of mine read it just for my own sake to make sure I didn't screw anything up royally. But because I just approached it as, I could have had a kid who was blue and it wouldn't have made any difference, in the way the story progressed, which there is a kid that's a guy that's blue in this book. So I've done that. But I do think I will maybe have a sensitivity reader once I get the ARC copies back, the advanced reading copies. I just felt bad sending someone a giant manuscript and be like, hey, could you do me a favor and look through this 300-page Word document? That seemed like a lot. So
I remember when we were doing our critique sessions, and again, this is 2 books back, you had usually you're very stoic. You're like, yes, give it to me, and you take it like a champ because you're a pro. You know that there's going to be stuff that comes at you, but you had your head down on the desk at one point because it was just all the time travel. Oh my God, trying to get the timeline straight, the plots to all agree with each other. I did not envy you.